A small swimming group departs on their ritual morning swim from Australia's New South Wales beach in Tathra. They head out toward the end of the wharf. It's their typical route, but when they turn to make the swim back, they realize that one of them is no longer with them. Hit like and subscribe. This is Fierce. Just over 250 miles south of Sydney lies Tathra Wharf. It's a wooden structure that was built in the 1860s. It's set in the seaside village of Tathra. The beautiful sandy beach and pristine waters are a lure for those who are lucky enough to live there. But there are dangers in the Australian waters. Sharks are ever present. Although they swim along the coastlines, they rarely cause harm. But if they are deliberately enticed to the area, then they pose a significant threat to people in the water. Bega Valley Shire Council had banned shark fishing at Tathra in the late 1990s. However, there were some fishermen who were still trying to catch them. It was the ultimate in fishing, and even though swimmers enjoyed the sea around the wharf, the fishermen still illegally baited their lines in hopes of landing a shark. In March 2012, local surfboat captain Sharon Clark warned swimmers about the dangers of taking regular dips in the sea. She had found a black balloon that was floating on the surface. Beneath it was a baited hook, an attempt to lure the sharks closer to shore for the fishermen. Knowing that the marine predators were deliberately being drawn to the seaside village was a disaster waiting to happen. But some ignored the warnings. They had chosen to live in such a beautiful spot so they could swim in the cool waters just yards from their homes. The careless behavior of a few fishermen wasn't going to deter them from enjoying themselves. Christine and Rob Armstrong, who were originally from Western Australia, were keen ocean swimmers. Christine had worked in Aboriginal affairs, and Rob was a teacher. The couple had been married for 44 years and had swum regularly in Western Australia. Now living in New South Wales, they started the morning ritual of a steady swim from the beach to the wharf and back again. They roped in others to join them, and soon it was a regular routine for them. Each morning for more than 15 years, they made the swim. At first, people thought they were mad because they even swam through winter, but over the years, the swimming group grew in number. On Tuesday, April 3, 2014, at around 8 a.m., Christine and Rob walked down to the beach. It had been 2 years since the concerns over sharks being lured to the area were made public, yet there had never been an incident. That particular stretch of coastline was considered a safe place to swim. Sharks were very rarely seen in the waters, unlike some of the shark hotspots further along the coast, like Byron Bay. Christine and Rob joined the other swimmers, and the 6 of them waded into the water. The sky was overcast and gray, but the sea was perfectly still. It was perfect for the morning swim. As they made their way toward the wharf, they were joined by a 7th uninvited guest. It was a huge shark, measuring 4 meters, 13 feet long. It swam behind the swimmers, waiting for its opportune moment to strike. At that moment, nobody saw it approaching them. With their heads just above the water, they couldn't see the ominous shadow trailing them. When the group hit the 800-meter mark, Christine turned around and headed back to the beach because she was sore from a recent trip to New Zealand. The others continued on. Christine didn't know it at the time, but she was swimming straight for the marine predator. In an instant, it came up and grabbed her. She was dragged below the surface, held in its huge, powerful jaws. It would have felt like being hit by a bus, and within seconds, Christine was gone. She hadn't let out a yell or struggled on the surface, waving her arms for help. Instead, the enormous shark had consumed her whole. Some people on the rocks looked out over the water. They saw a large shark arch out of the sea a few times. It looked like it was mauling something, but there was no sign of any person being in distress, and they couldn't see what the shark was apparently attacking. By now, the rest of the swimming group had made it to the end of the wharf and turned to swim back to the beach. As they did so, Rob spotted an ominous sight. A bird swooped down low right in front of him. Then he saw more birds. They were ducking and diving at something just yards from where the friends were swimming. He stopped in his tracks. Birds swooping down are a sign of a large fish or shark in the water. That's when Rob spotted the dorsal fin slicing through the water toward them. At first, he thought it may be a dolphin, but then he realized it definitely wasn't a dolphin. He immediately called his friend Patrick over and was terrified for his friend Mary as she was swimming straight for the shark. When she heard Rob shouting her name, she stopped and looked back at him. When she realized she was just feet away from the shark, she rushed back to Rob and Patrick, and the three of them did the only thing they knew they could do. They bunched together and continued swimming as a close group. As they nervously swam back to shore, they were scouring the water for their other friend, Colleen. But he then spotted her wading out of the water and striding up onto the beach. Nobody could see Christine, but they assumed she was already getting changed. When the five friends made it out of the water with their hearts in their mouths, they all hugged each other. It had been a very close encounter, and the five of them let out big sighs of relief before going to get changed. It was then that alarm bells began ringing. There was no sign of Christine. The group rushed outside and scanned the water, and very quickly a feeling of doom washed over them. Christine was nowhere to be seen. She had vanished. Could the enormous shark have taken her? Rob's mind was racing, and he quickly called the emergency services. Water police, rescue helicopters, and surf lifesavers all joined in the hunt for Christine. But there simply wasn't any sign of her. When the witnesses of the disturbance in the water were interviewed, and some came forward stating they had seen a shark arcing out of the sea, the signs began to point toward a shark attack. Rob and the rest of the group were now certain that the enormous shark that had swum toward them was responsible for taking Christine. It had happened so quickly that nobody noticed. When they heard the devastating news, the group was treated for shock. It could have been any one of them, and it couldn't have happened to a nicer person. It wasn't until the following morning that Christine's goggles and swim cap washed ashore, and police reported that a small amount of human remains was found. It was now concluded that the 63-year-old had been taken by a shark, and that news sent shockwaves through the small community. They had all known Christine for almost 15 years, and she was a much-loved and valued member of the village and its surf lifesaving club. She and Rob were chief training officers and had taught more than 70 patrollers. For Rob, losing his wife, who he had been married to since the age of 19, was extremely tough. The only thing that kept him going was a pact that he and Christine had made years before, in which they promised each other that if one of them was to go before the other, that they would keep living life to the fullest. Rob intended on honoring that promise. Rob took some comfort in knowing that Christine was incredibly happy in the moments before she was attacked. She had been doing something she loved, and the two of them had just returned from an incredible holiday in New Zealand. The attack was the first known shark attack at Tathro, but it was the second fatality in New South Wales waters in just 5 months. The beach was closed immediately following the disappearance of Christine, but just 2 days after the tragedy, Rob was back in the water again. He was struggling to come to terms with what had happened, but he knew he couldn't let it stop him. In honor of his beloved wife, Rob and the surf club did the swim again, all the while thinking about Christine. For Rob, it was incredibly hard, as it was the first time he had been swimming without her. The two of them were inseparable. They had both lost a daughter together, a tragedy that had brought them closer together, and since then, they had done everything together. Now Rob would have to navigate his new life without Christine by his side.